Stella, thank you so much for allowing us to your space and setting time to have this conversation. Today, we just wanted to know who Stella is. The last time, I heard you tell ladies that you like bickering about politics and that's how you make your money. And so, I just share with us a brief introduction of who Stella is.
So my name is Stella Agara. I am a governance and youth development specialist. I have been at it for the last 18 years. I've spent a lot of time building the capacity of young people to influence governance processes. I started off working with children and volunteering as a child rights defender right after high school, and then I branched out into proper activism for youth rights, and I established a career in the space of youth rights. I've been able to work on young people's participation in governance at a national level in Kenya, at a regional level in the East Africa community, and I have also had quite a stint in the continent of Africa, influencing different governance processes, including processes such as the setting up of national youth councils, setting up youth policies at a national level, like I contributed to the National Youth Policy in Kenya and the East Africa Community Youth Policy, which I participated in drafting, and the advocacy process towards the adoption of the East Africa Community Youth Policy. And then, of course, I've been in many conversations continentally, including contributing to even the drafting of the African Youth Charter. My work generally is to build the capacity of the most vulnerable people in our society to be able to influence governance processes and to participate actively in determining their futures and their destinies. When I'm not working, I love dancing a lot, so I take every opportunity to enjoy a little bit of dance here and there. I enjoy good food. I don't like hotel food much, so I spend a lot of time cooking good food at home or being in spaces where we're able to make soul food and enjoy it with people. I enjoy the company of people, and I'm a storyteller. I tell a lot of stories, but majority of the stories I tell are very political, especially because I have cut out a niche for myself in the political space in the continent of Africa, so I get to comment heavily on political matters nationally, regionally, continentally, and globally as well. Mostly, speaking to the geopolitics and how our politics is morphing at different levels. I have a background of law, international relations and politics, and I guess that's what has actually caused me to go in the direction I have gone. Majority of my work has been focused on matters of economic justice and climate justice. Economic justice because I come from a very poor background. I grew up in Kibra, which is one of the largest slums in Africa. But I was able to emerge out of that place, and I'm on a mission never to find myself in that kind of place again. And so I do not want to be out of that place alone. I believe there's an opportunity for many more people to be removed from poverty. And those are conversations that we must have. We must awaken some of the most vulnerable people in our society about the possibility of coming out of that poverty. And then, of course, to show them who and how they have ended up in that place of poverty. I have also taken an interest in climate justice issues. I recently, 2 years ago, got trained as a climate diplomat. And basically, as a climate diplomat, I'm qualified to be a negotiator on climate issues. And my stake in that conversation is to ensure that the most vulnerable people are actually contributing to this conversation, and that we ensure that the interventions that are taken on matters of climate justice are not just climate action that ends up benefiting the richest people in our society, but they're actually climate justice actions that benefit especially the women and the youth in our society, who at the end of the day will bear the biggest brunt of corruption and poor governance if we allow it to continue. I do enjoy storytelling a lot. I enjoy reading. I enjoy writing, but I require a lot of motivation to write. And I have no limits in terms of what I'm willing to do for the continent of Africa. I basically ran a motto even on my email signature that if it is good for Africa, I love to do it, I want to do it, and I must do it. I am deeply committed to ensuring that Africa prospers, that poverty is eliminated from Africa, that African citizens are reminded that we are the richest continent in the world, and yet we have been told every day that we are poor, and so we have come to a place that we almost believe it. I am committed to getting Africans to understand that if we transform our leadership and how we execute governance in our continent, we are able to bring our place where we'll have better governance for our resources, better governance for our power, and of course have influence in the global marketplace, and then of course bring Africa to a place, the place of prosperity that it's supposed to occupy. I'm also very committed to maintaining the wealth of indigenous knowledge in Africa, indigenous knowledge on food, indigenous knowledge on food safety and food sovereignty, indigenous knowledge on how we managed our economies, how we kept everyone in our society comfortable even at the times of the worst kinds of drought, and the fact that we had a mechanism to deal with poverty and ensure that nobody lived in abject poverty. Yes. A reminder also to the world that there are lessons to learn from Africa in terms of what democracy is about. And I spend a lot of time having conversations about most of what used to happen in our kingdoms before colonization, where there were mechanisms for selection of leaders, mechanisms for mentorship for leaders, mechanisms of elevating someone into leadership, and also mechanisms for disqualifying people who initially were considered to be on the lineup for leadership, but then engaged in acts or actions that then disqualified them, and therefore they had to be removed. I think there are lessons that the world is yet to learn from Africa on how we conducted ourselves on nobility, the royal families that we had, and how they exercised power and how they were regulated in our governance system. I think there's also a big conversation to have about culture, beauty, and just richness, you know. So for me, it's a whole broad spectrum of issues that I want to engage in, but the center and the core of it is to ensure that Africa is positioned to benefit from the global marketplace, and that the people of Africa get to live the best quality of lives possible because we are able to offer the right leadership to take advantage of our resources.
Wow. Wow, okay, Stella. So you mentioned about growing up in Kibra. Share with us about growing up, life as a child, growing up in Kibra. Which school did you attend? I was going to school. Did you lack so much, or because if somebody meets you today, they can't just juxtapose the Stella who was in Kibra and the impact you bring to the society today. Mm-hmm. So share with us about how growing up was and going to Burgas.
So I'm the daughter of an accountant and a teacher, accountant father and teacher mother. And they I think had their first, I don't know if it was their first home actually, because I'm the second born, so I don't know where they were before. But basically by the time I was born in Kibra. And one of the things I did not know living in Kibra was that I was counted amongst the poorest people in the world, not just locally, but globally. I thought I had the best life. I thought I was living large by virtue of the fact that I was raised in a home where we could afford a cup of tea every morning, and on special occasions we'd have Milo and Cadbury's chocolate, and we could afford bread on a daily basis. And I got to play with some of the toys I want. The only thing that constantly reminded me that I was poor and struggling was the fact that we had a black and white TV, and we had it for the longest. And for me, that got me thinking that maybe there could be something wrong. But even then, it did not register. As a matter of fact, it just meant that the neighbor had a resource that we did not have. So I was born in Fort Jesus, which is in Kibra, and then we moved from Fort Jesus to Olympic. By the time we were moving to Olympic, I had already gone to primary school. and had spent the first few years of my life going to school at Milimani Primary School. My mother is a teacher, and she's not just any kind of teacher, she's a Montessori teacher. So she's keen on early childhood development, and she, I must say, gave us the best foundation. All of us went to a Montessori school for early childhood development. By the time we were out of that space, we were, I should say, a notch higher than anybody who grew up with us in terms of language development, logic, and all those things. So by the time I was going to primary school, it only made sense for her to find a private school that would be able to give us the kind of education that we needed. So at the time we were enrolled in Milimani Primary School, which is not far from Kibra, but it's across the road, and then that is when I started interacting with the people who actually had means. That is when I was alerted to the fact that, well, across the road, we could be living in squeezed spaces, but there are people who live in 1 acre pieces of land, with a mansionette that is only occupied by a small handful of people. Yeah. So I went to Milimani Primary School, I think, for up to 4 years, or is it 5? 4 years. Yeah. And then my father decided to do an experiment that I think was a mistake. He sent me to boarding school in the village. And for 1 year, instead of 5 hours at Sega Primary School, I struggled tremendously. I had come from Nairobi. I was a diva. I'm still a diva today. Mm-hmm. So I really struggled with life in boarding school. I felt very sick. So most of that year, I was stopping my class because I was coming from a very good education system. Yeah. And a very good foundation, and of course I was going to school with people who did not have the comparative advantage I had in terms of the foundation. So I topped my class the entire standard 5, and by the end of the year, health and other factors had led me out of that school. Those factors are factors for another story time, okay. And you would be wise if you make a point of actually finding time to come and listen to those stories. But when I left Sega Girls, I was brought to Olympic Primary School because it was the best performing school in the country, and those days schools were being ranked. And so when I came to Olympic Primary School, I again was struggling because I had taken a whole year in a very relaxed school. I was performing so well, so I didn't feel the need to struggle. And all of a sudden, I arrive in Olympic Primary School and I'm nowhere near the top 10, not even the top 20. We are talking not even top 30. So I struggled the whole of standard 6. And then I got a grip of my education in standard 7. Yeah. It was going to be a very dangerous mistake my father made, but at least I managed to catch up quickly and step up. Of course, the caning in Olympic Primary also helped to push me to do the right thing, because I was really afraid of the cane. So I studied in Olympic Primary School, and I cleared with a B+, and that is how I ended up in Buruburu Girls Secondary School. So going to Buruburu Girls Secondary School allowed me to interact with people from all over this country. Now, when in Buruburu Primary School, that is when it became very clear to me that I am coming from a place of poverty, that I have lived in poverty all my life, and despite the fact that I was the elite in my circle of poverty and in my space of poverty, I now knew there was a different kind of elite, And so those years in high school were years of awakening. They were years of what should I call it? Basically, the stamping of a cause for me, because I now discover that there are people I have lived with all my life who need to be liberated from the situation they are in. But even I needed saving. Yeah. And so I as I was selecting the clubs I wanted to participate in, as I was selecting the activities I wanted to engage in school, they were very carefully selected to address the problems that I had left in my community. So I joined the Child Rights Club. I joined the debate club because I wanted to be able to argue the case for my people in Kibra. I joined the mathematics club because I believed that if I got to understand logic properly, I would be able to join the group of thinkers in our society. And I'm glad that I did, especially because I was very good in math. I have always been an A student in math. And so for me, it was an easy club to be in, but I also understood the value of mathematics in our society and the value of logic in the decision-making in our society. And unfortunately, it's not a message that is transferred effectively through our education system and to people. And you'll find most people who clear school without knowing why math was necessary. But for me, joining those clubs gave me an opportunity to have a bird's eye view of the problems in our society. The Child Rights Club had a preteens club, sub-club in it. It had a youth rights sub-club in it. It had a child rights club in it. In that space, I learned so much about the inequality in our country. I learned so much about the politics in our country. I learned so much about the policies in our country, specifically the policies linked to children at the time. And so, as destiny would have it, and I always say that I actually get my motivation and everything from a divine force, because God actually caused me to be put in spaces where I would begin to influence conversations on child rights at an international level very early. By the time I was in Form 3, I was sought after, required to travel to Philippines and go and speak on behalf of children. I remember I couldn't go because we were doing the mock exams, and I recommended somebody else to go. When I was in Form 4, again, I was recommended to go for another trip that I could not go for. Again, I was supposed to go and speak on behalf of children. I had done so many roles of speaking at national events on behalf of children in Kenya, on matters of child rights, even on matters of a position paper, the position paper that was going to be taken to the UN General Assembly special session on children. So I got exposed to policy-making processes very early. And I also had the advantage that I would read through any document once, and I would capture the message and would be able to communicate it to a different audience, which my teachers loved and took advantage of. I was definitely also a part of the music festivals. And one time the selected soloist fell ill. I had come with her from primary school. She was a soloist in primary school. In primary school, because I was struggling to figure out how to survive in Olympic, I never bothered with extracurricular activities. So when I got into high school, I joined the music festivals, and she fell ill once. And I remember it was during a closing day event, and I was asked to do the soloing because I used to do it for rehearsals. And then she would take over when she gets better. The truth is, after my soloing, she was never allowed to take over again. If she's watching this, I truly, truly love you. And I mean, once that happened, I realized that I have something. And I remember going home after that closing ceremony, wondering what is it that God has put in me, that every time I get a chance to lead, He elevates the small things I do into very, very great things. And so I had quite some time to think during that holiday. And when I went back to school after that, everything transformed. Everything. When I arrived in high school, I was top 20, and I didn't feel the need to do any more because I had gotten to the high school I needed to go to. All I needed to do is pass and go to university. But by the time I got the revelation I got after I went home after that closing ceremony, I went back to school and I was top 10 throughout, all the way to the end. And then I also became very committed to community work. And during that holiday, I remember doing a lot of work in church, in the community. Anytime there was a cleanup called, anytime there was a basketball event, any sports event, I would be there and I'd be participating in the dissemination processes for whatever information they were sharing. And there was always a dissemination event in Kibra. Because if you're not dealing with drugs, there was HIV. If you're not dealing with HIV, there was poverty. There was always a problem to address. So I stayed in Buruburu Girls for the 4 years. I loved it there. Ended up as a prefect in the school. I actually tried to refuse, and I was forced, compelled, possibly because we had participated in organizing a strike, and the school management believed it was important that they take all the leads and put them as prefects so that we watch over fellow criminals. So I cleared Buruburu Girls, and of course, my folks were not going to be able to support my university education. So I hustled on my own, joined University of South Africa, where I went to study law. And then after that, I also hustled to pay for the international relations program at the Atlantic International University. I did all this while working. So I have never, ever said that I am jobless in my life. Because I started in the year 2000. As soon as I left high school, I was selected to lead processes under the Kenya Alliance for the Advancement of Children towards the child rights work here in Kenya, but also towards the position paper on children that was supposed to be shared at UNGA. I think it was a celebration of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child at 10, so they needed to consolidate a lot of material to be able to make a proper position paper. So I was very busy. most of the work that I was doing was voluntary. But because of the build-up of those voluntary activities, I now developed certain skills that became crucial, and then started being hired to do the work that I was doing. I started being paid. So those things of people hustling with the small monies in their pockets are things I don't know. And I really thank God, because I'd come from a place of scarcity. But after that, resources became available, and in the process of working on child rights, I was able to represent children at the UN General Assembly Special Session for Children in New York in the year 2000, and before that yes, and before that in the Pan-African Forum for Children in Egypt. I remember we traveled there together with three other children, one from the Nana School, Yvonne Mainge, if you remember her, she was very popular in the media. Yes, she was a young TV host, and then of course there was another lady, and what's her name? The Nobel laureate Wangari Maathai. And I remember the journey all the way to Egypt and back to Kenya convinced me that there's something I have to do to run away from Kibra. Because I was living in a 5-star hotel in Egypt, stayed, my entire stay was taken care of by the state and the Department of Children and the UN. I had top allowances at that time. I was eating in high-level restaurants. I was being transported VIP. I come back to Kenya, and in fact, I remember the transport that was dropping me was the same that was dropping Her Excellency Wangari Maathai. So after she was dropped, the journey home was very, very cold, because all of a sudden everything shut down, and the closer I got to home, the more the lights went off. So I definitely knew I needed to run out of that place that I was going back to. And for me, it has been a journey that has just incrementally grown into what I do today.